Hello and welcome. You're watching the Global Reset on CNBC-TV18 Prime with me, Prashant Nair. Now, the big story today, without any delay, is US President Donald Trump singling out India in his tariff war. Once again, he slapped an additional 25% tariff on all Indian goods, penalizing India for its continued purchase of Russian oil. Remember, he did sort of promise that something big is going to happen in the next 24 hours, and unfortunately, he's delivered. The new tariffs, which take effect from the 27th of August, bring the total US tariff burden on India to a staggering 50%. The move came after Trump, in an interview to CNBC, had said, and I quote, "They're fueling the war machine, and if they're going to do that, then I'm not going to be happy," end of quote. The White House says the order could be revised if India takes measures to align sufficiently with the US. In another instance, the order could be revised if India retaliates. Remember, Trump has upped the ante in his trade war with India, slapping unilateral tariffs after months of stalled talks. The US president accused New Delhi of blocking market access for American goods and took aim at India's growing alignment with the BRICS bloc as well. Well, there have been many things. It's not just one thing. India, in turn, has had called Trump's threats, quote, unfair and unreasonable, end of quote, setting the stage for a fresh showdown in global trade diplomacy. Let's also hear what Trump had to say at that press conference about the tariffs that he imposed.
Please. Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours, so let's see what happens over the next.
Sanctions
you're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of.
You're going to see a lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions.
A lot more. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given his first very reaction to these tariffs. Listen in.
हमारे लिए अपने किसानों का हित सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है। भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा। और मैं जानता हूं, व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं। मेरे देश के किसानों के लिए, मेरे देश के मछुआरों के लिए, मेरे देश के पशुपालकों के लिए आज भारत तैयार है।
Okay, how's this going to play out, essentially, is the question. So let me get into experts in diplomacy, veterans really, former diplomats, Ambassador Anil Trigunyat and Veena Sikri onto the program. Thank you both very much for joining us. Mr. Trigunyat, if I can ask you, sir, I mean, how do we even talk through this? 50%. I mean, basically, if this is implemented, there is this 21-day window. Basically makes any exports unviable, right? I mean, it's just the absolute the tariff level. What is your sense? Will this be negotiated lower, and what's the path forward?
Well, I think that these are like those terrorist strikes. These are tariff strikes. And this is the fondest tool that President Trump loves to deal with and handles. It's like a toy for him. And because he's totally taking an irrational approach, making all the unjustified decisions, especially against India, because we have tried to tell him that it was in concert with the United States that India had been buying it, of course, for its own national interest. The Russian oil was, and India became the largest supplier of diesel to the United States. So they have been buying it, so that stabilized the whole market. But he has put everything on top down now. So he is trying to completely invert the whole thing and put blame on India. That is totally unfair. And of course, with President Trump, I think that you can't expect to reason out with him. We have seen what he has been doing in the last 6 months. He's just been imposing tariffs on every country. So I'm quite sure, prepared for this kind of behavior and approach. even though some people would be thinking that we have so-called global comprehensive strategic partnership and this will pass over. Now you can imagine when we are negotiating a trade deal, which was almost done on July 6th, and he didn't like it. So he went it back. So when you are doing the trade, why do you then impose tariffs in the meantime or increase them? But he did first 25, and he brings about the Russian angle to it, and he starts forcing India. Now we don't know what kind of secondary tariffs he's going to impose on the European Union or Americans themselves, because they are also importing a large quantities from Russia. So this kind of a hypocrisy, the world knows about. So just because they happen to be a superpower, so-called largest economy in the world, will have impact on themselves also. So this is kind of harakiri that they are trying to commit, and the impact of it will be known in due course. But in the meantime, India will have to brace for it. We'll have short-term problems. There will be, as Prime Minister said, that we have these red lines which cannot be left to anybody's manipulation, irrespective of whether you are a hyperpower or superpower or a partner or otherwise. So India wants good relations with the United States, wants fair relations, normal relations, but not when you are putting a gun on our head. So I don't think that's going to happen. In my view, India will look for more diversifying its markets and also trying to create more self-reliance and so-called Atmanirbharta. Now we have many options. I don't know if we'll go that path. Firstly, is to reciprocate the tariffs that we had done last time in the Trump 1.0. So it is not the first time that he's doing it. Last time also he did it. He also took us out of the GSP regime completely, saying that India is a developed country. Why does it need it? Now, the same kind of a thing can happen. This time, India had started with unilateral concessions on certain items. Even I believe that we were ready to give 0% tariff on the industrial goods, but they want to have the whole hog, which is not possible for India. Secondly, we are talking of some kind of a digital tax. I was just seeing some stats today that there are about $85 billion that some of the big American companies earn here in India. And they take it. That is the total quantum of the trade that exports that India conducts. So if we intend to do something about it, that is one of the options that is available to us. Of course, we'll have to now look at other options very, very seriously. And if the trade meeting takes place as talks, as it is said on 25th, 26th of August, we'll have to see where we go from there. But I believe that there is something more left. That is, tomorrow is the deadline, I guess, for the Russians. So let's see how the Russians behave. But we have seen he's exactly using the same methodology that he had used against China.
No, absolutely. I mean, by the way, to what you said, right? The one option is retaliate, but I think you've seen the statement, right? I mean, it is firm. It is saying it is unfair, calling the US out, but kind of stops short of doing anything else after that. And maybe that is to keep the window open, because if you kind of sort of throw up your arms and say, well, you know, it'll perhaps cause a break, which you don't want. Ma'am, if I can come to you, your first thoughts in terms of how this goes forward.
Well, I must say that I think India's reaction has been correct and very firm. This is very two important points. It's a very calm, cautious, and collected reaction. And we are not ruling out negotiation. I think the important point is the negotiating table is open. We are prepared to go to the negotiation table, and we are prepared to talk some more to the Americans. We're not going to walk out of the talks. That's very important. But we have a 21-day window to complete that till the 27th of this month, and certainly the talks are scheduled in Delhi for the 25th. But I think that looking at the bigger picture, there is an important aspect, two or three important aspects that we have to look at. First of all, India will not overreact because there are a lot of windows in this 50%. There are a lot of exemptions. The pharma is exempt, the iPhones are exempt, many aspects are exempt. Prime Minister Modi has been absolutely clear in what he is on his red lines, that he's not going to give in on dairy or agriculture, on the interests of the farmers and the fishermen and the entrepreneurs and the micro, small and medium enterprises. So these red lines are known. I don't think there's going to be a change. I think certainly we will be looking at the broader picture as well. I think the biggest factor that has been hit in this trade war is the trust the trust factor between India and the USA. This has taken a big beating, and India, we know there's already a report today that we have, put a halt, put a stop on certain defense purchases like maritime aircraft and so on. I don't know whether more of this can happen. So this trust factor is the most important factor that we have to look at, because for rebuilding, for getting back to where the relationship was, will this trust factor be able to revive so quickly? I think diversification is a very important factor. There's already talk that India's jewelry exporters may now set up shop in Mexico or set up shop in Dubai, from where they will be able to export much easier to the USA. There are a lot of ways out of the situation, and I'm sure that we can negotiate ourselves out of the situation. We can take steps on diversification. We can take steps on the ways in which our manufacturers can do. But I think this overall trust factor is vital as we carry this strategic partnership forward. It's an amazing factor that people are looking at, that every 27 years there comes this huge bump in Indo-US relations. In 1971, in Bangladesh Liberation War, we saw a huge bump. 27 years later, 1998, there was Pokhran and all the sanctions were there. And now we are again facing this situation 27 years later. And I must say that when you have this kind of a trust factor breaking down, it does take time to rebuild. It does take time to rebuild. I do see that India is going to adhere to its
Right.
strategic economy. I must say also that one more factor that has come out in all the calculations, that even if you have this 50%, the total impact, the impact of the 25% has been calculated. It's not going to be that much on India's GDP. And even if you take the 50%, it's not going to be that much given all the exemptions. Maybe 0.2%, maybe 0.3% or 0.5% at the maximum. So India is within its rights, A, to continue to be calm and collected and cautious, B, to continue the negotiations, and C, to look at this global reset, which is the title of your program, which is possibly being forced on us, but which may in the long term be a good thing, because we have to adhere to our strategic autonomy. I do see this. This talk about
Right.
the anti-BRICS and de-dollarization. India's never been a part of that. We are doing swap currency arrangements. We're doing, trading in national currencies, but we are not against the dollar. So this kind of building up, and whether Trump is doing it for his own internal consumption, there are legal challenges in the US to this. I think all these come into factor, but I don't think we should be very calm in building up our responses. This is vital, and I think that's exactly what we're doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I had Jim O'Neill, the man who coined BRICS back in the day, on this program a few weeks back, and he said his point was, well, what has BRICS really done in the last 20 years since that acronym was, coined in that sense? So actually, it makes no sense to call out BRICS and say, well, BRICS is doing this or that. That was from the man who sort of, coined it in the first place. I have to take a break, both of you, so stay with us. I want to come back and ask both of you a simple question. What went wrong, between India and the US? Because, I think if you can identify that, then it gives us maybe a way to think about what can be done to fix what went wrong, I think. Because surely it is not access to agriculture like what, the US has been saying or had been saying for a while. It's now, of course, also Russian oil, but is that even it? Or is there something else? So we'll come back and discuss that. Just a couple of more sound bites I want to sort of leave you to hear as we take that break. Coming right back.
The president is clearly very frustrated about the unwillingness of the Russians to agree to a ceasefire and to end this war. And that frustration is reflected in these recent decisions. The entire context has changed since a couple of years ago, when people were focused on inflation and price controls and all of that. The frustration of the president, I think, has to be addressed in some way, because this war has gone on too long. It has killed at least 1 million Russians, if not many more Ukrainians. And I think, there's a point where India and the United States have to have a conversation at the highest level about it. I would also say that these conversations are best done privately. The US and India can't afford to row away from each other.
Unless there's more of a willingness on the part of the U.S. side to relent and make some of its own concessions, it could be difficult to come back to the negotiating table. I think in the meantime, here, India's ongoing talks with the EU about the trade deal they're trying to come out with becomes much more important. India needs to look for ways to defray the potential damage or to ease the potential damage of these tariffs that could be coming from the US. And in that regard, getting that deal with the EU by the end of the year, the EU, of course, being another key destination for Indian exports, that would be big. That would be significant. I think it could give India a bit of breathing room. But no, the US-India relationship is experiencing one of its most difficult moments. I'd say its most difficult moment over the last 2 decades of strategic partnership.
Welcome back. Financial markets are pretty resilient. I mean, the rupee is pretty resilient as well. In the face of the additional 25% tariffs, an expectation is that things will perhaps work out in the next 21 days. We're in conversation with two seasoned diplomats about what can happen. And before I took that break, thank you for waiting, both of you. I said, let's talk about what went wrong. Mr. Trigunyad, if I can come to you, sir, because it is the goalpost has shifted constantly. Do you think what to your mind is the real problem here? Because once we kind of sort of know that, then you can address it.
There are two things that we need to keep in mind. Apart from President Trump's temper and his the kind of a person that he is or behaves in an international manner like an emperor. The thing is that number one, when he came back second time, he was basically talking about India as a tariff king many, many times. He's been saying it every time that he met or anything was going on. So in his mind, he has somehow made the decision that India charges such high tariffs and therefore it needs to be fixed, so that he goes from that premise. Second premise that he came was that he will end the wars in the world wherever they are. For the Russia-Ukraine war, he said that it would not have happened in the first place, or if he was there, it will end in 24 hours. He misread Putin, who knows they both know each other rather well. Then when Israel-Hamas war, he was able to do it for a day. And just after that, Israelis went back and once again the war began. So he has not got the success. He tried to claim for the Rwanda and Congo also. What happened there? Now, the biggest, I think the pick for him has been that he has been claiming at least 33, 34 times that he is the one who mediated and ended this war between India and Pakistan. India's position has been very clear that we don't want any third party mediation. And that is what has really pricked him, in my view. Personally, he has taken it very, very personally. And therefore, he is going after us. Firstly, he went directly, and then secondly, under the garb of the Russian oil purchases. Because neither Putin is listening to him. He can't hurt Putin anyway, because they are also dependent for their rare earths with them. They could not hurt China, because China stopped supplying some of these rare earth minerals to them. So they know that it's going to be directly impacting on them. And therefore, now he's going after the other BRICS countries, because that's what in his mind is that the BRICS is something which is indulging in de-dollarization. It is doing this or that. And so he started with Brazil first, and then now he's gone after India. South Africa was the first one he went after for various other reasons as well. So I think that in his mind, he has this warped impression about India's tariff regime, which India is ready to discuss. And that's what you are negotiating in this bilateral trade agreement, mini or otherwise, whatever deal it is. But then he, of course, started playing up Pakistan, those kind of things he's doing. So in my view, this is a very difficult thing, because if something becomes so personal, then strategic, then becomes increasingly difficult to deal with it unless you are going to swallow your pride.
Yeah, but if again, you can't put a lot of things go into that mix, right? And who knows what all go into the mix. But there are a bunch of factors, not just trade considerations. What Mr. Trigunyad, what number would you put to it? Weightage of that India-Pakistan thing that you spoke about? I mean, is it
Oh,
30%,
well,
40%, 50%?
Pakistan is a nuisance. So, I mean, I don't give much credits to
No, no,
Pakistan.
no.
It becomes a problem.
No, I'm saying the fact that he may have felt snubbed.
Yeah, so he's basically because Pakistan is sucking up to him all the time. They are
Correct.
the ones who sought
Correct.
his
So my question,
information. They
exactly. So
gave him credit to him.
they've
He's inviting Munir again a second time, as you know. So it shows that he's putting his eggs in that basket to some extent. And it's not the first time. I mean, let us not fool ourselves that he has been a great friend of ours and not that of Pakistan.
yeah.
Forever,
Yeah.
Pakistan has been one of the tools in their kit, especially the military
Yeah.
regime.
No,
I
absolutely.
mean, they have always supported
But
them.
for the purpose of this, because there is the actual tariffs, etc., involved here, you think it's an important factor in his mind, according to you?
Well, I don't think so. It is such a big factor, but it is becoming an irritant for us, at
Okay.
least domestically.
And it
So that is
complicates.
something that we need to give this thing. For him, it will just be to snub you, nothing else. But at the same time, I think that President Trump, the way he deals with things is like, I mean, you know that everybody sees that how the way he behaved, maybe in the Iranian context or whatever. But at the same time, I think that this is not the first time. They have
Yeah.
been very close
Yeah.
and with Pakistan. So this is something he's trying to win away, perhaps Pakistan from China, which is once again a folly.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that Pakistan will have problem going forward, choosing between Pakistan and between USA and China.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another conversation we can have. But it makes no sense, right? Because, I mean, I think if there was one bipartisan agreement in the US, even 2-3 months ago, was that, it was basically trying to curb and limit China's influence. And now that is, and now we are here. So it kind of baffles the mind and that's why I asked you, what has changed? I mean, are there any other factors at play here? Because, yeah, you're right. I mean, he's called India the tariff king for a long time. But, there seems to be maybe a few new elements at play. Ma'am, you want to come in? Your thoughts?
Yeah, let me say one thing. I think tariffs, this is something that has been on President Trump's mind right from his first term as president. He wanted this to be his great contribution. And, we do know that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, found this, I think, economist, Peter Navarro, not really an economist, but who talked about tariffs. And it began from there. And in his second presidency, he thought that this would be the big thing that he would contribute. But the fact is that tariffs is not a good idea. This business of putting tariffs up.
Ma'am, my question is, sorry to come in. You can go back and look at his videos on YouTube, President Trump, from the 1980s. He's spoken about 30% tariffs on China. Back then,
yes.
I think he would be asked whether he'd run for president someday. He said, well, not really. But, of course, tariffs are a bad thing, and they're taxing the consumer, etc. But my question is specific. To your mind, are there, like Mr. Srigunyat said, are there any other factors? Or is this just retaliation to what he says are high tariffs on India's parts on US goods? Are there any other things in the mix? Yes.
No, I'm just coming. I'm coming to many other things in the mix, but I think on tariffs itself, the fact that India has reacted in the way it has, and India is not rushing in to give concessions or to renegotiate, and our Prime Minister's message is very firm. Our Prime Minister is working on our own national interest. He's talking about Atmanirbhar India. So on tariffs, he has not got from India what he wants. I think the Pakistan factor certainly came in because we do know that Pakistan had been, right from the time that President Trump was re-elected in November of last year, they've gone in with these 13 lobbyist firms. There are a lot of people around Trump who are again and again and again from the 13 lobbyist firms telling him things, against India and in favor of China, in favor of Pakistan. Now, we do know that this has resurrected the old deep state feelings. We do know that what happened in Bangladesh last year, a year ago, was because of the deep state in America. President Trump promised to end the deep state, but he has not. He has joined the deep state. So what is continuing is exactly what happened last year when he used Pakistan, when the American deep state used Pakistan to end Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule in Bangladesh, working through some portions of the army and the Jamaat-e-Islami, the radical Islamist party. Now, this is what is now continuing. This is continuing because you've seen everything that's happening in Pakistan and Bangladesh today is to rile India on this subject. The deep state wants India in an unsettled neighborhood. Even on Myanmar,
right.
When America first wanted to go to a deal with the Arakan army. That didn't work out. So now they're trying to talk to the junta itself and lifting sanctions on certain individuals in Myanmar, on which he had put sanctions. So I think President Trump is trying to build up everything for his forthcoming negotiations with China. And we do know that in the beginning, President Trump had put a very harsh position against China, but he has backed off considerably from that. And on China, not even China buys much more oil from Russia than India. Turkey buys more oil from Russia than India, but they're not putting tariffs on them. The key is going to be the American negotiation with China, which is forthcoming. And the one, apprehension that I have on this is that are America and China preparing to go back to the Barack Obama idea of a G2? You know, that you have USA and China as the two big superpowers in the world, and they will then decide who are their friends. Of course, this will be a very uncomfortable situation. India does not want this situation at all. India has always opposed a G2 situation. India is in favor of multipolarity. We believe in strategic multi-alignment. So this is, but I think this is the core factor behind. He is thinking of what he's going to do with China, and he's building up the cards. You know, he's thinking he's taking the Pakistan card away from China. He's taking the Bangladesh card away from China. Of course, he's riling India in the process. That seems to be collateral damage as far as Trump is concerned. And he's also trying to work with Myanmar. Again, the Myanmar card, taking it away from China. So he's on these factors. I think it's building up to this core meeting between USA and China that is going to happen, they say, in September. Let us see what timing works out. And they want to do some kind of trade deal. They want to do some, and if they do a kind of a trade deal which involves a give and take, it might really mean going back to this G2. And again, Trump is going to go back on his earlier ideas, you know, on when he was so anti-China, when he was so anti-Pakistan. It's a complete reset in Trump's global approach. But India is going to stay put on its own positions, on its own strategic autonomy, and I think we will win the day.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just as it was getting interesting, you brought in a new aspect, right? China into the mix. And I would have loved to get Mr. Trigunyat's views as well, but we're completely out of time on this episode. I mean, but this is a platform where we can sort of continue to debate this, talk about this in terms of how this develops. And we'll have both of you back once again. Thank you very much, Madam Sikri and Mr. Trigunyat, for joining us. Really appreciate your time here. Well, that's this episode of The Global Reset. Thank you for watching. More coming up on the other side.